Hello and welcome to another video. So one of my favorite decks from Unlimited Play, probably ever, has always been Aggro Sword, right next to or right up there with my favorite being Aggro Bats, as some of the more fun decks you can play that just absolutely usually decimate opponents, just storm to the face, don't need to worry about anything else, and can complete missions extremely fast. So I thought, why not revisit the Aggro Sword? I haven't done this deck in a little over 2 months. I usually try and do it at least once an expansion and try and revise it slightly, so here it is. All I've done with this in particular, I took out the two Beatrix I think, the Rush follower that gives you a Storm, in place of Omen of Craving. If anyone's been playing the meta currently, Omen of Craving is nuts, and it's not really much exemption in this kind of deck, as if you get to turn 7, even just as a 3-5 drain, she is a fairly decent card, and being able to buff low-cost followers is always reasonable. If for some reason you get caught into a later game, it's not too bad, and even with just one Quick Blader on turn 8, it automatically becomes a 3 damage burst, which is really good. So we're going to get right into this and check it out. So this video should definitely be one of the shorter ones. I mean, it is an Aggro Sword deck. It's a deck that I've covered a fair bit in the past as Aggro Sword. So if you are interested in checking out those videos, go ahead. The decks don't really change too much over time, but it's nice to see the progression as well. Of course, this deck is fairly straightforward. I mean, it's spam as much as you can to the board while hitting face, mostly focusing on Storm damage or Commander Officer Storm synergies to really take full advantage of damage. Blood is usually a good matchup because it's very easy to go face and whittle them down because they also hit themselves. But this hand we've got is very much a brick. This is a very bad hand to have against Blood, but still a good matchup to show off to you guys. So Paladin's Fencer is probably one of the best plays you can have on turn 2 if you've played Quick Blader on turn 1. Of course, playing it on its own is just not very good. But considering I had no other play for turn 2, was really all I could do. Novice Trooper, decent 2 damage Storm. Mainly all I can do is push damage to face. I know they're going to get Florus. I can't really do much else. I could have tried to slow them down, but it just wouldn't have been worth wasting my time to do so. Better off just getting that face damage in where I can and taking the game into my direction. At least we got Centaur Vanguard, a great card to combo with Perseus, especially with the Evo. We are going to set them to a 4 health, which is fairly reasonable. It does put us at risk though. They did go for the Evo on the Florus. This was where I was actually very curious. That's why this game is so quick. If they had have just traded with the Vanguard, healed up, they probably could have drawn the game out enough for them to win. But in this situation, I managed to just win because self-damage takes precedent over attack, which means they damage themselves before damaging me. Works in my favor every time. And of course, next up is Havencraft. Probably one of the more negative matchups for this deck, typically. If you start off with an extremely good hand, which in our case, at the moment, not that great, then you can outvalue Haven in the early game and really take the mid to late game. Of course, if they do end up heal blocking you, you're pretty screwed. There were a few Haven matchups I run into where I just got blocked out by heal damage and really couldn't do anything, but it was always worth a shot. Also, I want to get your guys' feedback on something. I'm actually planning to cover a few of the Mana Surge budget decks in the future, probably over the next 3 to 4 days. Like, I've got one more video after this one that will be a normal deck, but after that I want to cover a few budget decks for you guys. I know some of the beginners will probably take advantage of them, and I think it'd be nice to cover a few of the budget decks and have them for this current meta, especially since we're right in kind of the middle of this current kind of meta and month, and we'll see a shake-up. Not too long, but I don't think budget decks will be overly affected as they don't tend to favor golds and legendaries that much. So, not great. Banishing my entire board. A little disappointed. At least we got a reasonable amount of damage in the early game. As you can see, basically just spamming as much Storm as you can in the early and go face is mainly the aim. And I was really just trying to take advantage of whatever I could get at this point. Healing Prayer, though, kind of ruining any plans I had. Definitely makes it tricky when they use something like Healing Prayer. That's why Haven typically is a bad matchup, as healing can be very hard to counter. Novice Trooper, though, is at least a good start. That is going to get us 4 damage. Or 5 damage, sorry, on the Novice Trooper. Setting them to 6. Very close. So, Mori, not an issue. Omen of Repose, a little bit of an issue. So we're just short on lethal next turn by 2. It's going to require a pretty good draw. I think the only decent draw we can get is Centaur Vanguard. And we manage it. Centaur Vanguard, Albert, 7 damage, 2 face. Perfect lethal. Would have definitely been tough otherwise. I don't think we would have survived. I would have had to probably slam Omen and go for the Evo heal, but this worked out just fine, and that's usually how this deck functions. Pull out the wins from nowhere. So we're probably going to take another look at this aggro sword deck until at least after the mini expansion, if there's something good for sword that could fit this. Otherwise, it'll probably be until the next expansion after December, which will be, you know, pretty expected. It's going to be a pretty rough time in December, of course, as, you know, Christmas, New Year's, all of that, and the Shadowverse expansion every year always kind of throws any kind of schedule I have out of the window, but hopefully I'll be able to keep the content coming for you guys all the time. We should have a mini expansion announced soon or coming soon. It's just going to depend. As of making this video, we haven't heard anything, but I expect the announcement to be very, very soon when I'm making this. So if you guys did enjoy the video, hit the like button and subscribe. You'll find the deck list in the description below. Till next time, see ya.